William Morris, the famous man who later became Lord Nuffield, introduced the bull-nosed Morris as long ago as 1913. And after the Great War of 1914-18, it became a very popular car on our roads. It competed with many other cars, not only in its performance and roomy passenger carrying, but also in its price. It became a household name, the bull-nosed Morris. So named because of, well, it's pretty obvious from here, isn't it? Yes, starting by handle in those days, very few had self-starters, and of course, those of you deciding to go on holiday or to a picnic, no spacious boot like your modern counterparts, but a basket on the back. Very simple inside, a simple 3-speed gearbox and an engine of about 11.9 horsepower, the old RAC rating. Beautiful cars, and we see many around the rally sites now, which shows the reliability and longevity built into this famous marque. I remember them only too well, and they became very popular with the farming community. Farmers, because of their very rugged build. Following them came the Morris Oxford that we see here, a more traditional style radiator, a radiator pattern that followed on well up into the 30s. This old car reminds me very much of our local haulage contractor in our village who used to take his family and sometimes myself for a ride in it. And look on the front there, that temperature gauge, so typical of temperature gauges back in the 20s and 30s. Very reliable because it was a sensor that went straight down into the hot water on top of the header tank. And you could see it from the windscreen. Well, now we have all these modern electronics. This one hasn't got a basket on the back, he's got a proper case. A little bit upmarket, I would say, but so typical of cars of their era, the running boards and the spare can of oil, because filling stations weren't as frequent as we find them on our modern roads and motorways. Great cars were Morris's. And at this show, we see quite a few, not all of them, but here we have something that's very rare, may I say unique. It's a Morris sports car. Now, Morris weren't actually reputed for building sports cars. They had MG, Morris garages, to do all that. But this enthusiast here has built a sports car to the old 30s tradition, and he's built it from an old Morris 10-4. More about them later. Now, this is what happens when someone finds an old car such as the 10-4, realize it's past its best but can't throw all the bits away. The body is scrapped and they use the chassis and parts to build a traditional line sports car, and a very good job he's made of it too. And I understand this particular one's for sale. It is very reminiscent of the MG sports of the era, especially with the fishtail exhaust on the back there. And I did admire this car and had a good look around it, and it's very difficult to believe that it's not a normal production car. It really is a fascinating bit of machinery built on the old Morris 10. And as you can see, it drew a lot of interest from the crowds here. Still using the same old rigid front axle, but there is what it originally looked like. There's the Morris 10-4. What a reliable, steady bit of car they were. And I say steady because the performance wasn't all that hot, but it was good enough for the day. Brilliant headlights they had on them, if I remember. I have driven these old cars from time to time, and 0 to 60 was nothing startling. You were lucky to get there at all, but the solid construction and coach-built body of those was really excellent, considering it was the sort of normal production car. The bodywork of the Morrises often competed with some of the other higher class cars. In fact, nobody seemed to get that bit of cellulose and bit of chrome better than Morrises. I always admired them. Here we have a fine example here of the coupe. Once again, my memories go flooding back to our local doctor, who, when he wasn't riding his bicycle, he used to often turn up in the village in one of these in a very light grey. But this is the first time I've seen one of these for a long, long time. I think it was known as the Tourer. You had to be somebody, you know, to own a car like this in those days. And you really got to be somebody to own one like it now. But look at the finish inside there. The beautiful leather trim. And that typical of its era. The handle on top of the door for opening the door. Spare wheel stuck up there on the back. But cars had such individual distinction, didn't they, back in that era? Whereas now they all look very, very similar. The computer seems to come up with the answer now, whereas back in those days, somebody scratched their head and drew a pleasing design. But beautiful restoration here, and a car capable of lasting a long time yet. A little smaller, the Morris 8 Tourer. This was very popular. This was a car built to compete with the little Ford 8s and the Austin 7s of that era. But I say without fear of contradiction that the Morris was by far the most beautiful of them all when it comes to the finish. Now that is obviously a rebuild there, but that was how they appeared when they came out. The beautiful cellulose finish on them was remarkable, and the chrome always seemed to have that extra luster. And here's a little car, despite its year, fitted with hydraulic brakes, whereas cable and rod was the norm back in those days. Sweet little car to drive. They built the saloon version as well, which was also very common among the working class people that could afford a car. Pretty car and a pretty shade of red there. They did a red and a green and a black. Someone else will remember another color, I shan't just for the moment. But this particular car, I see at many rallies, it's always beautifully prepared and well looked after. Some loving restoration there. The Morris 8 Tourer. That added bit of trim, the chrome strips down the back where there's a joint, that is typical of Morris. Little side valve engine, 4 cylinders. Didn't produce a very high number of horses, but it got you there. There's a cozy little back seat, an ideal family saloon. If you sat in there with a well-proportioned person, there wasn't a lot of room between you. You got to know each other fairly well sitting in the front of a Morris 8, or even many of the small 8s in those days. A little bit different to the small cars on the road today, isn't it? And there we are, look, there's the saloon version. Isn't she handsome? Same immaculate Morris finish. That very recognizable Morris radiator that came out that shape ran about the middle, late 30s and went on right up until the war years. Surrounded by some beautiful chrome. Registration number says bad, but believe me, they were all good. Another of our Tourers, this time in blue. You can see this one with the hood up, and you can see the little flap beneath the window. That's so you could give your hand signals. No indicators in those days. Some had little semaphore signals, but you were expected to give hand signals in those days. How many of you know the way to give a signal for turning left? Well, still applies. Yet another of our little eights. Later on in years, they had a slightly different pattern to the radiator grille you see here. And as you can see, did away with the spoke wheels, and this one's got the pressed steel ones. A later version. And if you were quick to notice, just behind the doors on there, you could see the semaphore indicators. Don't know where he's going, but he's got a suitcase on the back, on the luggage grid. Everybody enjoying their look around here, looking at old cars. We're looking at Morris's today. And what is this? This is the ever beautiful, ever popular Morris 8 Series E. A faithful old 29 horsepower side valve engine, very similar to the running gear of the Morris 8 Tours that we've been looking at. This is a little two-door version, but they're so attractive. And they had some streamlined headlights merged right into the wings at first, but they weren't very efficient. The damp used to get in them and they weren't all that bright. So Joseph Lucas of some renown, he devised this system where you could fit these attachments and put some sealed beam units in there, which was much more efficient and useful on a dark night, but tended to come away from the original beautiful line. The Series E Morris 8, 918cc, and in this case, they now have a 4-speed gearbox. Lovely little cars. Yes, I remember the first years of my marriage when we were stuck with a motorbike and a sidecar. It was always our wish that if we could buy a car, we'd buy a little Series E. But around about £300 second hand, they were far too expensive for us in those days. Yes, they fetch quite a lot of money now, and you can see why. It's an easy car to park up and keep in your garage at home, and a beautiful car and a popular car to take to any rally. Of course, spare parts are quite possible and quite easy through the Morris Owners Club. Now then, we're coming on to Morris Oxfords again now. This particular Morris Oxford, of course, based on the same principles as the A55 and A60 Cambridge that was built between 1959 and 1961. By this time, Morris and Austin had become the British Motor Corporation, were building practically identical cars. The Morrises had a slightly different radiator grille, but it was what we were now referring to as badge engineering. Smart cars, attractive cars. They had an overhead valve engine of 1500cc, later to become 1600, I believe, about 1622, the later ones. Nice 4-speed gearbox with a floor change, and of course these were also badged as Rileys and Wolseys with a slightly different radiator, but they went on to be very popular cars over the years. We've got to give thanks for the very clean, attractive body lines of these cars to that very clever designer Pininfarina of Italy. Very thankful that he came to design these bodies, because we were gradually being taken over by the hideous American styling that just didn't suit the smaller cars. Have a look now at the estate version, a very useful vehicle. Yes, you really had to look close to see the difference between the Morrises and the Austins in these days, but The name Morris was, as I said, still going on as it had done for many, many years, a very famous make of vehicle. Here's another surprise for us. You could well look here and say that it's the A40 or 50 van built by Austins. But if you look closely at the radiator, it's Morris. Another of those horrible examples of badge engineering. Here Morrises are producing vehicles identical to Austins, except for the badge on the front. But Austins did the same for Morris. Remember that attractive little van that was common in the 50s, the little Morris J with the sliding doors? Well, do you remember the Morris Marina? Here is the Marina Coupe. This was, yes, only a Morris. They didn't put Austin badges on this one. And a good car it was too, with two different size engines. The biggest one was the 1800 and a 4-speed gearbox with a floor change in them. And in their day, not a bad old car at all. Nice and roomy and quite modern lines. This is the small one, the 1.3, as you see, the Coupe. I like these very much. I used to drive one quite a bit. My daughter had one of the 1.8 that she had darn good service out of. He wouldn't have much to brag about in today's motoring with them, but put them where they belonged, back in their era. Didn't do a bad job at all. Still a few on the road in everyday use, which is a good advert, isn't it? There's the ordinary saloon model, very smart. That would probably the deluxe model. I think Morris has called them HL, the top line. And now we're going on to something that, well, we all know about, don't we? The Morris Minor. The original Minors came out about 1948. That was a little tourer with the headlights down low, with a side valve engine. Then they went up to use the Austin engine, the 800 odd cc engine, 803, I think I'm right in saying, when they put the headlights up further to satisfy the American market, because these were going over to the States quite well. They still had the old twin screens in the front, what they call the split screen. But here we're at a place where they still renovate old Morris Thousands, and you can buy one here in almost new condition, or they will tell you as good as new. So let's have a look around and see what we've got. We've got bits and pieces of all of them here, because this particular production went on until about 1971, I believe, when they went on up to the 1098cc engine. It was a long run for a very good and reliable car. Designed by that famous designer that designed the Mini, Alec Isigonis, who always had a good eye for cars. 4-speed gearbox, overhead valve engine. Here they're putting the final finishing touches to a superb finish, but that particular one was the Morris 1000 Traveller. That was the ideal transport for any small family. This one is the Open Tourer. These aren't so common, but a little bit more about that later on. Here we have a fairly old car, a fairly young modern mechanic. We didn't wear gloves in our days. I don't see why they shouldn't. The oil used to pollute our sandwiches, something awful back in those days. Here's one lying on its side, ready for an operation. You can see quite clearly the engine and rear-wheel drive transmission layout there, and the leaf suspension. No chassis, of course, unit construction. And like all unit constructions, a bit prone to the tin worm occasionally. So here's the competent welder putting things right. Another body there waiting to be filled up with some mechanical components. And rather a sad sight here, isn't it? This is what happens when you really neglect them. I don't know if that's beyond redemption, but it's a job that I wouldn't care to tackle. But this very able and capable firm really do turn out some first-class stuff, and I've seen many of their products around the rallies and around the roads, still doing stalwart service and looking like new, because they were a lovely car. Not bad performer, sound all to themselves, that little blast back through the pipe as you change gear. Now let's take one on a run.
My name is Bob Hawkins. I bought this car when I was an apprentice working in a garage, and I bought it in 1964. It's a Series 2 Morris Minor. The year of the car is 1954. It was 10 years old when I bought it. I've kept it for quite a few years. I used to use it daily. Then I sold it once, and I bought it back a year later. It is a rare car today because it's a split screen. There's not many of them about. I suppose there is. I suppose there was quite a lot made at the time, but they are getting very scarce. So it's an interest for me and a hobby to look after it. This one particularly don't like the hills very much, but I can put up with it. The only thing is, a lot of the modern cars are waiting behind you and they want to overtake, but I just got to go along quietly with it. And I put up with it now, but in the beginning it was, you know, it was a bit of a struggle, but it's no problem. I don't intend selling a car. I'll keep it now indefinitely because I've done quite a lot of work to it. So it's not hard work now for me. I can just do a little bit every now and again to it, as long as it passes the MOT every year. I am a mechanic by trade, but over the years I had to change the engine. I think I've done it twice now. I hand painted it at one time. Then I wanted it back to its original colour, Empire Green. Then I had to rub it down to the bare metal, and I had to take all the chrome and windows out of it, then take it and have it resprayed. And now I've got it back to its, more or less, its original condition.
Originally a saloon run by one of my staff who was purchased off me. He'd run in the back of my Land Rover, wrote it off and another car into the bargain. We then turned around and took it back off him because he never paid for it, and it was stored for quite a number of years. It was then repaired and taken to Malvern. They took the roof off it and made it into a convertible because there are kits around for doing the job properly, which they only done the car. We done the rebuilding of the rest of it. We had one of our own customers off the Milk Road spray it for us, and since then we've done a number of weddings with it for mostly club members. It's as standard as can be, other than that it's got servo brakes, H4 headlamps, electric washers and automatic reversing light. It still carries a 1098 engine, which we rebuilt about 7 years ago. And the gearbox is still the original, which is unbelievable. It's now into the 90-odd thousand mile. Rust in it has been very negligible. We've had our little mishaps, especially where other people seem to want to modify it with dents. But beyond that, it as you see it, is what you got, and it's a very good vehicle. It's been to Jersey. It's done weddings all around the country, and I've got no worries about going anywhere with it at all. But it's 10 years now, and it wants to start thinking about some major work doing on it, paint-wise mostly. Half it was done last year because we refitted new doors, a new boot lid and a new valance. But I've noticed, in fact only today, that the rust is coming through bad on the front wings. So we will probably put fiberglass ones on there. Then they should last because they were done by Smith & Deakin and they're done to our own thickness. They're not the ordinary standard ones, they are made that much more to last a bit longer. Being what's known as a chop top, and it's now a convertible, roofs are not all the same. It's no good having a standard in through the post hood. You really need to have it made to fit it. Now Don Hoods in Birmingham usually fit my hoods because I find they are the best. We started off with the first hood. It all came apart, the stitching came undone and all. We then had a second one which we bought through the post, as you can see, and it would not fit tidy. It fitted, but not to the standard we would have liked. I complained, they gave me another one, which I still have, but it's never been fitted. Because the year before last, we were at Land's End, and the wind was stronger than the fixing of the hood. And it took it away, and the insurance agreed to pay for a replacement hood, which is the one that's on there now. It can be put up in quite a few seconds. It takes a bit longer taking it down because you have to fold it neatly, and we do have a bag to put it in to make it finish, which is black. But as I say, putting it up when it starts to rain, it's in seconds. There's no problem at all. 4, 6 press studs and 2 wing nuts, and it's up. And to me, it's quite convenient because you've got the windows all around you, so you don't get the wind blowing of the same as if you've got no side screens or anything like that. The original Morris Miners did have a lift-out side screen at the rear, and for some unknown reason it seemed to vacuum the air in behind you, so you had to wear a cap to keep the hair out of your eyes, which is one of the biggest things with all convertibles. If you've got long hair, it's a problem, and that's why you see someone wearing with their hats back to front. Well, my wife drives this car mostly. It's been fitted with an invalid seat for myself, which is on slides, which is equal to the Metro. My wife uses it mostly because it's the only vehicle we got other than commercials. And her sister can get in and out of it because she is crippled up and can't work. The wife would rather have a more modern car because she complains the suspension is a bit hard going over these modern retard ramps. Basically, she's quite happy driving it because it's very cost effective, is the main thing of it. It's just as I say, an ordinary standard, but it's not as most people buy them as a second car or as a banger to take the kids to school. To me, it's a bit of a luxury car. A long-standing thing I would have always wanted was an open-top vehicle. But my wife got it all the time. But then, my love is commercials. And that's where it lies. And then maybe one day she might have a more modern car if she wins the lottery. That's the only time, because as far as I'm concerned, Morris Miners are here to stay with us. Amen. And that's it.
Well, we haven't covered all our Morrises here. That'd be a very difficult thing to do because there's quite a range that went on from the 30s up through to the 50s that it's very difficult to find examples of. But Morris and Austin, the BMC, produced a car which has been one of the most famous, if not the most famous, of all post-war cars. That's the Mini. The Mini came on our roads in 1959. A clever design by a clever man, Alec Isigonis. It was said that he sat 4 people in chairs in his office and drew a car around him, taking up the minimum space possible. To do that, he had to put the engine across the frame instead of the usual 4.5 position. He made it front-wheel drive to take up less space from the floor from the prop shaft that rear-wheel drive cars were forced to have. And thus this famous little compact car came about. Well, When you look and realise it was a British design, look around at all your cars from all over the world now. 90% of them have got transverse engines and front wheel drive. We, in Great Britain, were responsible for that design. Isn't it a pity we aren't responsible for producing more cars than we do? When you get a club meeting like this, you find minis, many and varied. Not only do you find lots of stalls where you can find your spare parts, but there are accessories there too. Very enthusiastic bunch are Mini owners, and there are many clubs around the country. No, they aren't all the same. In fact, if you go around, you've got a job to find two the same. These have had their wheelbase widened, as you can see the fairings around the front and back, and they have various transfers to stick on them, just to make them go faster, obviously. But no, they're an enthusiastic bunch, the Mini owners. This one's got the name John Cooper on. That's the Cooper Mini. Now that really was a hot job there. The first ones came out with 998cc, but they went on to have a 1275cc engine in them, which made them a very hot performer. And you only got to look at rally history and sporting history and see how often the Minis really came to the fore, because their road holding when they came out first was something outstanding. There was nothing to compare with it on normal roads. And not only were they used on normal roads, here we have one used on grass. And it's very basic, being there just to show it off its performance against competitors, with its windscreen there, just a grille there for protection. A real little grass track Mini that, and if you've ever watched these, you will know what an exciting event it is. Oh, they've really pleased so many enthusiasts, not only the sporting enthusiasts, but I remember only too well back in my police service, a little girl sitting on the side of the road sobbing her heart out because her Mini had been smashed up. They become family pets, the young and old alike. Well, he's not going to get lost in the dark, is he? Obviously built for the road rallying. They were so low and so stable. The cornering, as I said, was outstanding. It really took us by storm. And here's one done up in a safari colouring here. You get a club beat like this, you get a lot of enthusiasm. Now there's one, you see, that's a Mini, but a bit different at the front end because it's got a Riley badge on it. They also had the Wolseley badge on them as well. Here, the coupe version. Very interesting to go to one of these meets. As I say, you got a job to find two the same. Now Morris's didn't produce them with that coupe top. I don't believe this is something that other firms would offer to do for a price. There's a patriotic lad there. Not only were they easy to drive in sporting events, but they were easy to park too. You could see your corners pretty well in a Mini. She's getting a round of applause there. But if you can't park a Mini, don't try anything else. Morris also developed the Mini van, little 500 weight van that did good service for many small dealer, contractor shop or whatever. Cheap to run, cheap to maintain, and fun to drive. There's a different front on that one. That was known as the Clubman front there. There's a typical example of the Clubman with the windows down the side. Available with 998c, later the 1098cc engine. Often see the ladies out with their dogs in the back in the Mini Clubman, an ideal second car. Minis, many and varied. Have several clubs represented here at this particular meet. Bags of chances of chatting amongst the owners there. Lots of opportunities too to see who had a better Mini than you, if there was one. Lots of tormenting goes on at these meets. Very competitive lot. There's one well and truly covered with lights and stickers, obviously a rally enthusiast. And here, yes, it's still a Mini. This is the Mini Moke. This was a bare bones Mini built for, well, as a beach buggy, if you like to call it that. And same old Mini engine and gearbox, and this one's been well padded out too, and quite comfortable. Very much a young person's car, not so much for we oldens. Now, our friend Nigel, our interviewer, he went along to this meet to have a chat with some of the Mini owners. Let's see what he's got to say.
Well, we've all heard of the expression, a gaggle of geese. I wonder what a collection of Minis is at such an event. Madeline, any idea?
I think it's just the general appeal of a brilliant British little car. It's still very popular today. People just love it to bits. We're out on the road normally, we get flashes and toots and a wave, and it's really great, you know.
Now, you're the chairperson as well, aren't you,
That's
of
right,
the Saffron Walden and Cambridge Mini Club?
That's correct, yes.
How many members have you got?
We've got roughly 60 paid up members, a hardcore of about 35, and the fanatics of about 20 odd.
You've come,
We attend to everything.
and you've come a fair distance today as well.
Well, that's right, yes, it's about 80 or 90 odd miles.
Yeah.
But we go all over the country,
Do you?
yes.
Do you go sort of into Europe as well, or is it just the UK?
Some of our more adventurous people do, like the club secretary, he goes quite regularly, and we've got another gentleman here called Mark Troppin who's actually off to France next week for a navigation trial.
Ah, right.
But I have not ventured with mine across the channel yet.
Now let's talk about yours. It's a fascinating car. It goes back to World Cup year, 1966.
That's correct, yes.
It's a D-Reg.
Yes.
What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's a 1966 Morris 998 Cooper. But virtually the base model of the first of the Mini Coopers. It's distinguished by a couple of 1.25-inch SU carburettors, a more mildly tuned engine, 7-inch disc brakes, different trim, and various other little bits and bobs.
Because the trim itself on the inside matches the outside, I noticed.
That's right, yes.
You've got grey and green.
Yes, and it's still available to nowadays for retrimming by coach trimmers,
Yeah.
you know. So you can get virtually everything for it. There's nothing I can't get for this Mini Cooper.
I was going to ask you actually, Madeline, now that this model has obviously ceased production, how do you find getting parts and things? Is that
Incredibly easy.
Yeah?
A show like this, you can actually come across periods, second-hand parts, or you can buy brand new reproductions. This, for instance, is a brand new reproduction of the original bonnet badge.
Is it?
That cost about £30. But because it's made from Mazak, when they chrome it, it actually starts bubbling up after a few years, and it goes really cruddy. But this, I had this brand new one put on last year.
Right, right. And is there anything else that we should know about the front, for example? These headlights, were they as standard when the vehicle was built?
I'm not absolutely sure about that. I think these were a factory fitted option. But one interesting thing I learnt at a classic car show last year was that this side is correct because it has the red logo in it, but this side should actually have a blue one, which is a slightly different style of lamp. Apparently it's supposed to be spot and fog, but someone's actually fitted 2 spot or 2 fogs to it.
Oh, so that's quite an interesting fact.
Yes. It's got Cooper S reverse rim wheels instead of the standard rims which have a series of holes in them.
Yeah.
It actually improves the tracking slightly and it's a lot more stable on the road.
Yeah.
It's also hydroelastic suspension, which is a fluid and air suspension system, which gives a very smooth ride.
One thing I noticed that this car hasn't got, which unfortunately has plagued, I suppose, British cars over the years, and that's rust. This is well, I can't see any rust at all along the sills or anywhere.
No, it was fully restored about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I bought it 3 years ago from a chap who restored it, and basically it's garaged all the time. Never goes out in winter, never goes on the salty roads.
So it's looked after in
Oh yes.
for all seasons.
Yeah, there's a few little chips on it now, but
Yeah. But it's looking in remarkable condition for a 1966 vintage.
yes. Well, as far as I understand, it's virtually original down to every last nut and bolt.
Let's join your fellow club member now, Simon, who's going to tell us about this one. Simon, this one's in remarkable condition as well.
Yeah, it's 1970 body shell, proper original Mark III Cooper S body shell. It's got a 1340 Cooper S engine in it, about 102, 103 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in about 8.2 seconds on a reasonable day.
So a fairly nippy little model
Yeah,
then.
it's quite nippy, yeah.
Yeah. The seats though, they don't look
No, they're not
as
original.
standard.
No, it's got the roll cage and things in there as well. It's more for safety.
Let's
So I
take
need to unlock it.
let's take a peek. Let's take a peek inside.
Yeah, it's more for safety than anything else, just to make it a bit stronger. Because modern cars and modern speeds of traffic, you need a little bit more in there than the standard Mini's got, I think.
Yeah. So one thing I have to ask, what is the attraction of owning a Mini as compared to, say, a Peugeot 106 or a Ford Fiesta?
Well, I'd say I took my driving test in the Minis, and my first Mini, Dad said, well, if you want a car, you're going to build it yourself, and we bought this wreck for £25, and I started from there when I was about 16, and took a driving test in the Mini as well, that the driving instructor had, and I've always owned a Mini since I passed my test, which was 18 years ago now.
All right.
I've had this one it's been in our family 18 years, since my mum had it, so originally.
So it's got quite a sentimental history
Yeah,
then.
and the registration number is EDA, which I didn't notice for about 5 years. It's actually my grandmother's name.
Is that right?
I didn't notice for years. I was like, oh, it's got EDA. Oh, that's my grandmother's name. I'd never even thought of it like that. I just EDA, I just
Yeah.
didn't think about it.
So really quite a family link then.
Yeah, it's the only reason I've kept it.
Yeah.
My sister learnt to drive in it originally as well, and it virtually fell apart, the bodywork.
Yeah.
And I got hold of a brand new body shell in primer to rebuild it with, proper Mark III shell, so it was exactly right to swap everything over onto.
Great.
And so we say thank you, Nigel, for those interviews. And we hope you've enjoyed our Morris video. We haven't found all of them. Perhaps we left your favourite out. Well, perhaps we should try again sometime. But just look at the beauty of that there. And I hope you've enjoyed what you have seen. We've seen some very interesting cars, comfortable ones and less comfortable ones. So, till our next show, bye for now.